Welcome back for another deep dive. This week we're focusing on all the news from the Faroe Islands, from December 9th to the 15th.
Yeah, you've been busy this week, I see.
Always busy. So we're going to give you a quick rundown of what you may have missed while you were out living your life last week.
Right to it. No messing around.
Exactly. You already know the Faroes, you're familiar with the key players, so we're just going to jump right into the headlines across politics, the economy, sports, and even a quick weather check.
Buckle up.
Let's start with politics. I think there were some pretty interesting developments on that front.
Oh, yeah. There were some rumblings in the coalition government. Barer Astig Nielsen, who leads the Samband's Flokkerud party, you know him.
Of course.
Well, he came out publicly and said he's feeling less bound by the coalition agreement. So that's a pretty strong statement.
Yeah, it definitely signals some tension there, what was causing that friction.
It sounds like disagreements over aquaculture regulations were a big factor.
Oh yeah, aquaculture always a hot topic.
Always a lively debate.
Anything else shaking things up in the political arena?
Yeah, actually, we had a resignation. Janus Haraldsson, the chair of the Media Support Committee, he stepped down.
Wow, that's a significant development. Any insight into why he resigned?
Yeah, he cited the difficulties of managing the responsibilities of the role, and that was later confirmed by the Minister for Culture.
Oh, so some potential political shifts to keep an eye on.
Right.
Now let's talk about money. How did the Faroes economy fare last week?
Well, first up, big news in the fishing industry. The Faroes and Norwegian governments, they finally reached an agreement on the allocation of North Sea herring.
Ah, that's good. That had been dragging on for a while. Right?
Yeah. So that's good news for both sides, I think.
Definitely. Any other notable economic news?
Wages, average monthly wages went up 4.5% year over year, reached 35,864 kroner per person.
That's a decent bump. Is that across the board, though?
Well, that's the average. You got to keep in mind women's wage is still a lot lower than men's, unfortunately.
Right. Important to remember that nuance.
Yeah.
Okay. What else?
Chocolate. Get this. People are worried about the cost of chocolate going up.
Oh, no. That's terrible. I have a major sweet tooth. What's going on there?
Well, global cocoa prices, they've gone crazy, up like 80% since September.
Ouch. That's going to be noticeable on the supermarket shelves.
Yeah, for sure.
And finally, any news from the government's coffers?
Yeah, not the best news. Treasury's revenue is 250 million kroner lower than projected.
Oh, that's a sizable shortfall. What are they going to do about that?
Well, it's causing some concern. They're talking about maybe asking for an increase in the block grant from Denmark.
Okay, so some potential economic challenges looming now. Let's lighten things up a bit. What happened in the world of Faroe sports last week?
All right, women's handball team, they wrapped up their participation in the EHF Euro.
How'd they do?
We can talk about that more later, but for now, let's move on.
Sounds good.
Uh,
Okay, how about the men's national football team? Any news there?
yes, big news, actually. They had their draw for the 2026 World Cup qualifying stage.
Oh, right. Exciting times. Who are they up against?
Some tough competition they're facing, either Croatia or France. Then the Czech Republic, Montenegro, and Gibraltar.
Wow, that's a challenging group. When's their first match?
Mark your calendars, March 22nd against the Czech Republic.
All right, I will. And any exciting developments in volleyball?
Yes, in the Faroes Volleyball Premier League C, they're back on top. They beat I3 Norvos.
Nice, decisive victory. All right, politics, economy, sports. What else happened last week?
Well, there was this researcher, they recommended a hunting ban on fulmars, kittiwakes, and guillemots.
A hunting ban. Whoa, why?
They're concerned about those bird populations, saying they're declining, could even face extinction.
Oh, wow. That would be awful. Any good news to report?
Yes, definitely. Faroe Islands Red Cross, they allocated 1 million kroner to help out in South Sudan and the Philippines.
That's fantastic. Where did that money come from?
It was from their recent fundraising campaign.
Great to see. And finally, can't forget about the weather. What was it like last week?
Changeable, as always. High winds and precipitation, but there were some nice days mixed in there, too.
Typical Faroes weather. All right, so there you have it. A quick rundown of all the happenings in the Faroe Islands last week. Now we're going to take a deeper look at some of these developments.
Let's go back to Barer Astig Nielsen for a minute, saying he feels less bound by the coalition agreement.
Yeah, that was pretty eyebrow-raising. What do you think the implications of that statement are?
It's hard to say for sure, but it definitely raises some questions about the stability of the government, especially when it comes to these tougher issues like those aquaculture regulations.
Yeah, and speaking of tough issues, we have to talk about Treasury's revenue shortfall. 250 million kroner. That's not a small amount.
No, it's not. That's a lot of money. It really puts the government in a tight spot.
It makes you wonder what kind of impact that'll have on their plans, and they're even considering asking Denmark for an increase in the block. Can you remind us what that is exactly?
Sure, basically, it's a lump sum of money that Denmark gives to the Faroe Islands every year. It's supposed to help with things like public services, making sure the economy is stable, that kind of thing.
So asking for more money from Denmark, it kind of suggests that they're struggling a bit, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, it could be seen as a sign of weakness. Some people might interpret that way, and it could definitely have political ramifications.
For sure, it raises questions about the Faroe Islands' financial autonomy, too, right?
Right.
They want to be independent, but they still rely on this financial link with Denmark.
Absolutely. It's a delicate balance, and this situation it's going to force them to confront that complexity.
This whole thing really highlights how everything's connected. The politics, the economics, the relationship with Denmark, it's all intertwined.
It's a real life example of how governing is never simple. You have to juggle all these competing priorities.
Now, let's switch gears a little bit. Talk about that researcher who's calling for a hunting ban. Seems like a pretty extreme measure, but I guess they must be really concerned about those birds.
Yeah, it's a bold proposal for sure, and the Faroe Islands have this long history of bird hunting. It's part of their culture, their traditions.
Right, so if those traditions are clashing with conservation, that's a tough situation to navigate. How do you balance heritage with responsibility?
It's a question a lot of places are grappling with. How do we preserve the environment for the future while also respecting the past? It's a tricky one.
It reminds us that progress isn't always easy. Sometimes you have to challenge long-held beliefs, and that can be difficult.
Yeah, it takes open minds and a willingness to adapt to find a way forward.
And speaking of adapting, I think it's worth pointing out that even with all these economic uncertainties, the Faroes people they're still helping others. That donation to South Sudan and the Philippines, that's pretty incredible.
Yeah, that 1 million kroner, it speaks volumes about their character, their generosity, their compassion.
It shows that even a small nation can make a difference in the world.
Exactly. And acts of kindness like that, they can inspire us, give us hope, especially in times like these.
Well, this deep dive has certainly given us a lot to think about, from the political scene to the economy, and everything in between. It seems like there's never a dull moment in the Faroe Islands.
No, there's not. It's a fascinating place full of contrasts and challenges, but also a lot of heart.
And the people there, they seem to have a real strength, a resilience that's admirable.
Yeah, their connection to their land and their culture, it's something special. And I think it'll continue to guide them no matter what the future holds.
Yeah, it's been a fascinating look at what's been happening in the Faroe Islands. So much to unpack. What's your final takeaway for our listeners today? What should they be thinking about as they go about their week?
I think it's easy to think of the Faroe Islands as this remote place off the beaten path, but what we've seen this week, it's a reminder that even there, they're dealing with global issues. Things like commodity prices, environmental concerns, the relationship between smaller nations and bigger ones. These are things that affect us all.
So it's a microcosm of the world in a way.
Exactly, and it shows how interconnected we are. What happens in one place can have ripple effects everywhere else.
And it also highlights the constant change, the challenges that we all face, but also the human spirit, the resilience that gets us through.
Yeah, and the Faroe Islands, they're a great example of that. Their determination, their connection to their heritage, it's
Yeah.
really inspiring.
Well said.
Yeah.
I think that's a great note to end on. It gives us hope. It reminds us that even in uncertain times, there's always something to learn, something to appreciate, and something to motivate us to build a better future.
Absolutely.
So until next time, stay curious, stay engaged, and keep exploring the world around you.